Welcome to another how-to video from bugspray.com. In this video, we're calling it part 3 of our series on what's that noise in our attic. If you've not watched part 1 or part 2, you can see links below. Essentially, part 1 covers the initial inspection. So assuming you're hearing some sounds up in your attic, what do you have to do to find out what's going on? What do we look for in the attic? And how do we determine whether or not we have a real serious problem or just a miscellaneous animal that got in and left? Part 2 is more about the outside inspection. So what's around the house that is important? What areas do we need to address as far as points of entry, etc. And this video I'm going to cover more about the process of what to do after you've established that yes, you have animals visiting your attic, or you have potentially a nest site and you want to get rid of them for good. So at this point, let's assume you've done your inspections, or maybe that you just have found something in a remote section of the attic, maybe just a corner, and you're a little concerned. You don't want this to be an ongoing issue, so you want to do something, but you're not quite sure, is trapping even warranted, because you're not hearing sounds on a regular basis. Maybe you've not even heard a sound. Maybe you just found something and you're thinking, okay, so there's potentially an animal up here. If this is true and you're not really sure that anything is happening, you want some peace of mind, the easiest thing to do would be to install one of our sound repellers. If you go to bugspray.com/ultra, you're going to learn about this unit. We have a great video on this unit that covers everything it can do. Essentially, these are units we have built for us. They're not found on Amazon or any place other than our website, and we had them built to spec so that they cover virtually all animals. In other words, you can have this set to work around the clock, you can have it set to work daytime or nighttime only, you can have it used outside a home, inside a home. It has an audible sound, so it can be really loud, which is ideal for remote locations with some of the bigger animals that it can work on. But for the smaller animals that we get in the attic, we're talking voles, rats, squirrels, flying squirrels. These animals you can go ahead and manage with the ultrasound setting. That means that you won't even be able to hear these units. In fact, where this is being videoed, there's actually units going off continuously. So there's a unit here, and if you watch, you're going to see a light blink in a moment. This is what's going on all the time, because I have had some issues in this attic, and the best way to keep them out, once you trap them out and do some scent removal, is to install some of these units. So I have, I believe, 4 units in this attic space alone. It's a very big attic space, as you can see, and it's also got some, well, just a lot of rafters and tray ceilings, all of which tend to block the sound, and therefore I need multiple units. There was the flash. So as you can see, it incorporates ultrasound and incorporates some flash, and it's constantly going. I've got a unit over there that's going all the time as well. I have that unit focused on another section where there's a big tray ceiling, and there's been a point of entry there that had to be sealed. On this side of the house, there's not really been anything. We do have a couple of other knee spaces, or smaller crawl spaces, that are at the second level. I thought it was being smart making those spaces when the home was built, but as they turned out, they became more of a rodent home during winter months, so I have to have units in there as well. And at the end of the day, these units have been a savior for me, because it's essentially prevented me from having to do ongoing trapping. Now, if you have animals active and you find not only droppings, but you find routes of entry, and you've brought in, say, a professional, or your inspection confirms that, yeah, there's definitely a lot of stuff going on here, so I got to do something. In general, placing one of these units out to start will at least buy you some time. They're not designed to solve problems, but they can. If the animal is just visiting when there's adverse weather, say winter storms, a lot of rain, excessive temperatures, either cold or hot, and they're trying to get away from the weather and not really nest in your attic, then these units will do a really good job. Just place them up, make sure the area is covered, and it's a forget it and set it type device. But if you have holes and you are pretty sure there's a nest that's been built, sometimes you'll notice this with flying squirrels and squirrels in general, although bats roosting would be another good example of animals that come back quite a bit. Then in that case, you're going to need to do a little more. These units will chase the animals out, and certainly once the animals are out, you want to be able to seal up those points of entry. But if you do that and there's an animal nesting, most animals are not willing to give up the space, and that's because, well, just think about it. If you came home and found your house boarded up at the door and windows, would you just leave and never come back? Well, no. You would figure out a way to get back in. And that's essentially what most animals will do if you just try and block them out. So what we recommend is either live trapping or kill trapping. In this example, I'm just showing a couple of live traps. There'll be links below for, say, the rats and obviously squirrels, and on those pages you'll be able to see more traps, but I'm not going to cover all the traps. That's not what this video is about. In general, this small one will capture any vole or roof rat, flying squirrel, a shrew. It can catch squirrels, but we don't recommend it. The larger trap here, this little green 6x6x16, is excellent. All of these traps can be used outside as well as inside, and in general, trapping outside is what we recommend. But all this is covered in the specific animal article. If you don't know the animal that you have, go with one of these. I would also encourage setting out a little bit of pecan surprise in a little bit of a bait cup. So if you take a bait cup or any type of soda cap and make it really low, like a low profile, put a teaspoon of our pecan surprise on there and set it out, you know, where you're seeing any activity, you'll learn pretty quick if you have an active animal. If the bait is taken, then go ahead and do the same thing, but then start using it around the trap. And of course, this is all covered on the one page below, the link for rats, how we do what's called step trapping, and how we can get animals to first come around the trap, get a taste of the product, eventually getting them in the trap. It takes 2 or 3 settings to get that to happen, but at the end of the day, step trapping is very, very much a proven method so that we don't develop trap shyness. If you have active animals and you think that they're nesting, you're going to have to do that with the live traps. And if you're using a snap trap, kind of the same thing. So let's say that you are initiating your trapping. If you do, and you have one of our units deployed, remove this unit once you start trapping. So we want to invite the animals back. And you might think that's crazy, but if we remove the 2 or 3, 5 or 6, or some cases 8 or 10 animals, then the chance of reinfestation is greatly reduced. So we always encourage people to trap. Now, let's say that you begin the trapping and you go a few days, you capture something, you reset, you capture something a few days later. Just keep repeating. At some point, you're either not going to catch anything and you're not going to see any activity. You're not going to find new droppings or anything else. And if that's happening, then that's a good sign. Now, once you go 2 weeks with no new animals trapped or no new sign, then you can go ahead and remove the traps and think about doing some closure. Doing the closure on the outside of the home is generally best, although some cases it can only be done on the inside. It just depends on where it's located. But get any closure done that's needed. If you're not sure where they're coming in, then obviously you're going to need to rely heavily on our sound repellers, because they will keep them out even if you don't know where the point of entry is. At this point in my home, as I said, I have several units. at least at least 4 up here, and then in my other spaces I've got a couple more. And I've only found 1 or 2 entry points. I believe 2 entry points over the years. But with these units, I'm not having any problems. So once you've gone a couple of weeks and you have no new activity, go ahead and get these units up, and you're pretty much done. The only thing left to consider is whether or not you have to do some descenting. And we talk about this in a lot of the articles. It's obviously very important for animals that have a real bad issue with bad smelling droppings. Say, for example, bats. I mean, their droppings are super nasty. So if you've got bat guano, you're going to need something like Alton to get rid of the odor once you've done the cleanup. So most likely our lemon air or Sani Shine to kill off any bacteria and virus, and then a follow-up with the TON, the total odor neutralizer, to get rid of the odor for good. But the total odor neutralizer is excellent for erasing what we call rodent trails. And most people don't realize, but animals like roof rats and voles, even flying squirrels and squirrels, they rely heavily on scent to come back to their points of entry. And if you're not removing those points of entry odor, then the trail will always be there, essentially the roadway that leads to your attic. And once you've trapped out the various animals that have been active, the scent trails will remain active for at least a year, if not 2 years. And during that time, other animals are going to be able to discover the trails, find their way into the home, and you could have a new problem develop. So how do you go about removing the odors? Well, the TON is the way to go. Typically 4 ounces mixed in a gallon of water, sprayed on the inside areas where you're finding activity is what we recommend. We do have mist blowers if they're in big areas and you want to cover everything so that you're not missing one surface. And then most importantly, taking this outside and spraying it on the sides of the home. So you would want to spray from the roof line, assuming they're getting in around the gutters, all the way down the sides of the home to the ground, and then literally on the ground as well, coming out a good 10 or 20 feet. Those scent trails are marked with pheromones and special scents so that these animals can follow those trails back to the home and then to the entry point. And if you want to erase those odors and those scents, use the TON. Once the odors are gone, you've essentially taken away their roadways so they can't find their way back inside. The odor removal process is ultimately what makes your home impossible for new rodents to find. Well, at least it will dramatically reduce the odds that they're going to find it quickly. And in doing so, you're going to be in a way better position of decreasing the odds of a reinfestation. So don't ignore the odor removal, and certainly don't ignore the installation of our ultrasound repellers. We have the one post, it's called How to Stop Rodents from Coming Back to My Attic, which covers this in great detail, and that's a good read. The link will be below as well. That particular post came up because over the years we just had so many people say, look, I keep coming here buying more bait. It's like you guys are just making me buy the Trapper's Choice, and all I'm doing is capturing rodent after rodent after rodent. Sometimes I can go 3 or 6 months without catching them, but then there's more. And the reason for this is obvious. There's a scent trail that leads to those locations where they've been placing the traps. And if you don't remove those scent trails with the TON, well, you're going to have animals continuously coming back and ultimately getting inside. So, that, in summary, if you've discovered that you've got an animal living in the attic after you've done your inspections, get one of our live traps, start doing some trapping. If you feel the animals are only visiting now and then, maybe a seasonal pest such as bats, you can, when they're gone, do a cleanup, do the virus and bacteria removal using our Sani Shine or Lemon Air, and then an odor control treatment with the TON, and then of course setting up our sound repellers. That will be a permanent fix. And the same is true if you think you have an animal that's just visiting during adverse weather conditions. Just set up the ultrasound device and forget it. The unit running continuously will keep them out. Some might be concerned about pets or the impact that this unit might have on children or something. It's running an ultrasound which is very, very high in frequency. It has no penetrating capabilities. It's not like the ultrasound that's used for ground inspection where they're looking deep into the ground. This is not anything like that. These units put out a high frequency. It has no penetrating capability, and if anything, all these pieces of wood, all the structural members up here, all they do is block the sound, and they create dead zones. Anybody that's living below where the ultrasound device is not going to be hearing anything. These units, for most people, can't be heard. Personally, I can't hear them at all. Once you get into your 20s, you typically lose that ability of hearing the ultrasound range that they're set at. In some cases, you can set them to where people might be able to hear them, but it's not anything that does damage. It's just an irritating noise, and in particular, very irritating to the animals. So that's all that's happening. We're not hurting the animals. We're just creating a sound they don't like. And then when we add to that the light that comes from the motion detector and from the light bar strip, all that combined makes it very uncomfortable for them to want to hang around. So the unit's very safe. The TON is so safe it can literally be sprayed on plants and it will not hurt them. For example, you could take flowers, like a really nice smelling rose, and treat it with the TON and pretty much eliminate its nice aroma, and the rose will continue to live. So TON can be sprayed in the landscape on the sides of the structure. It's going to be mixed with water. It's not going to hurt anything. You can apply it with any of our fogging machines like the Bug Spray Fogger or the little mini mister that we now have. These are all ways of applying the product, and very, very helpful in eliminating those scent trails so the rodents don't come back. And ultimately, that's what the goal is here. So I hope you've enjoyed our 3-part series on What's That Noise in My Attic, and now have an understanding of what's involved regarding the solving of the problem. So check out the articles below to see if there's one that is specific for the animal activity that you have, and if you don't, just go to the little post that we have on rats. That link below is going to show you and tell you about step trapping, and then of course the how to stop rodents from coming back to my home is going to talk a lot about the ultrasound devices and the TON treatments used to neutralize the odor scent. So thanks for watching my how-to video from bugspray.com.